There's no slump to be seen around here, guys. Skee Mask is just the god. Yes, Skee Mask back with a new album, Resort, which came out just over a month ago now. I'm a little late to it. At this point, if you were wanting to see a review from Ryan, from me, and you were thinking, oh, I guess he's not going to review it now because it's been a while, then you are wrong. But you were okay to think that, because actually I don't do as many reviews on this channel these days. I focus on other things on the channel, as I'm sure you have noticed, as well as reviews. So it's very reasonable to think I probably was going to skip over this one. But not today, sir, because I've been listening to this album, and it is Skee Mask at his very best. This is one of the best albums I've heard all year, and one of the best electronic albums I've heard this year as well, and might even be just the best electronic album I've heard this year overall. Speaking of, speaking as somebody that isn't maybe on the precipice or on the top of electronic music at all times, I'm sure the wonky angle has you covered in that department, but I still feel as though out of all the albums I've heard in this kind of style this year, I think Skee Mask has got it locked in. This album feels very much an album that is attempting to set tones all the way through, and I feel like this album is kind of split into two sections, and that feels purposeful to my ears anyway, and I will get into my explanation for why I think that is. But yeah, just throughout this album, you're just constantly feeling everything that the music is pouring into you. Like you're constantly feeling every beat, you're constantly feeling every note, you're constantly feeling every melody. Like everything about it just kind of sinks into you in a way that not many other albums I can point to this year have done for me. And that's why I think this album might not necessarily connect with everybody. I don't necessarily think you're going to come out of this immediately after first listen and being absolutely in love with it, because I wasn't, but I actually think a lot of people may feel that way as well, because it kind of is a bit of a slow burner at points. And if you're just focusing on maybe the first few tracks, you probably want to sit with the whole thing, because it does kind of build into something a bit different by the end. The opening track to me is super interesting and immediately sets the tone for what you're going to get on this album. I guess you could paint a picture here and follow along what I'm about to say, but to me this track is as if you have just landed on Earth from a spaceship. You maybe crash landed, you're a bit all over the place, you've survived somehow, if that's even possible. You probably would die if we're being honest, but let's pretend you survived, okay? This is the fun of it. And it's super cold, it's desolate, there's nothing to be seen, you've just exited this spaceship, everything's hazy, everything's washed out, you're confused, and this track just offers that feeling in such a weird way. There's something so icy about it and desolate and despondent about listening to it. It's such a weird track, it kind of freaks you out in a weird way, but it does sound so cool. And then the next few tracks kind of continue with that theme. Nostalgia Glitch is really peaceful, you're kind of getting used to your surroundings, everything's so quiet, but you're still feeling a bit lost, and you're still feeling very alone and very lonely, and yeah, you're just kind of finding your bearings a little bit. This track also does remind me of the Other People Place, which is another electronic group which you should check out, by the way. Really cool albums under their belt. That icy, deserted feeling comes through again though in the form of a much more harder beat at around like 3-ish minute mark, and then carries on throughout the rest of the track. It's at this point where the album does start to gain a little bit of life. You get the next track with the Reminiscrimx. I wrote it down because I couldn't remember exactly how you friggin' say this one, because I don't know. Anyway, this track again feels isolated, it feels claustrophobic, and then it's got this bustling sound that comes through, which I think is really cool. That's one thing about Skee Mask's beats, they're always just so like full and just like brimming with sound design. I guess that sounded stupid, didn't it? But as the album progresses, you do start to get to a point where you've like entered some kind of like more positive environment. Perhaps you're learning how to deal with your surroundings, or perhaps somebody's come to save you, and Daytime Gamer is exactly that track. It's got this discovery feel to it, it's got this wonder feel to it, it's got this whimsy about it, which I really like. It sounds like it came directly out of an indie game that maybe is like a side scroller or something, a game I'd probably be able to reference if I knew anything about games. But I don't. I don't at all. I don't know anything about games. I can't even say a game that it reminds me of. But if you go watch somebody like Buffalo Staple, who is an actual gamer, he might be able to just tell you a game and then you go, oh yeah, it sounds like that. So yeah, basically I'm kind of cheating my way out of reviewing here. But anyway, it's a great track, one of the highlights on the album. I also want to mention Schneiders Paradox, which has this like erratic drum pattern, which I think is really cool. This is what I mean. The album just hits a point where you escape that icy claustrophobic feel and then enter this more positive environment, and things just kind of come to life a little bit more, and there's a little bit more adventure to it, as if you're kind of just going on your journey, as if you would find in an indie game, which I still can't name one. 7 AM at the Rodeo carries on that kind of off-kilter, weird, jaggedy drum pattern, which I think is really cool. Again, just more standout tracks that kind of remind you of something maybe like Nicholas Jar would do or something like that. I also want to mention Hölzl was a dancer, if that's how you say it. Hölzl? Not entirely sure. This track I think will stand out the most to people. It's kind of got the most like bombastic, wavy techno feel to it, which I think will be the most accessible for anybody on the album. I think if you're waiting for something to happen and you're maybe a bit bored of the previous tracks, you might just want to wait till you get to this one, because I think this one will be the one that appeals to the most people, because it's got the most accessible sound to it. The icy sounds come through again on Vitamin 313, where it kind of pairs up with these pummeling drums, but it still feels like it's got this like desolate feeling. Kind of feels like it's smashing into some kind of like icicles or something, or they're breaking whilst the drums are just smashing. It sounds really cool, really like it. I just think Skee Mask has just a really interesting ear for this type of sound. He always manages to come through with a really interesting vision. And like I say, this album feels very purposeful. Maybe I've interpreted it in the wrong way and I've gone maybe overly simplistic with it, with how I was saying how it kind of transforms throughout the album, or maybe I've gone overboard in analysing. I don't really know, but you can't really gauge what an album like this is attempting to offer, because, you know, there's no lyrics, there's no actual major theme. I haven't really seen Skee Mask say anywhere what this album might be about, but I like interpreting music in my own way sometimes. I think that's the beauty of it. I think it's beautiful to come out of an album and get your own interpretation, because if I watched or read another review of this album, I'm sure somebody would say something completely different, and yet both would be worthwhile and both could potentially be really valid. But yeah, I really like it. It feels lonely, it feels trapped, it feels like that feeling doesn't last forever and you escape that feeling eventually, and there's perhaps some more hope while it also still feeling a little claustrophobic at times. Whatever this album is attempting to offer, I just think on a musical level I really enjoy it regardless. Even if my interpretation is way off base, I don't really know, but I think it's great, and I'm going to go 8 out of 10. I think it's one of the best albums of the year. And I hope you check this out. I really hope you've watched this video as well, stuck around till the end, because my electronic reviews don't tend to do amazingly on this channel. Not entirely sure why. It's not really a genre of music I think that pops out to most people in the same way that like pop music does, obviously, or a rock album or a hip-hop album. I get it, but I hope you've checked this out. I hope, based on my recommendation, you're going to give it a go. And if you have already heard it, let me know in the comments what you think. What do you think? Do you agree with me, disagree with me? Why? Check out more videos. Check out my Patreon as well. At least make sure you've subscribed to the channel. Also, have a good day. Goodbye.